This episode is brought to you by Kanye West and his inspirational quote: "She got a light-skinned friend, look like Michael Jackson. Got a dark-skinned friend, look like Michael Jackson."
Welcome to the Stephan Dyer podcast, my people.
Hello, my people! ¿Cómo están? Welcome to the Stephan Dyer podcast, where I welcome people with remarkable stories for amazingly vulnerable conversations. This has been one of the most profound conversations that I've ever had on the topic of heritage, identity, mental health, racism, classism, and privilege. Pierina is a friend and a true example of resilience and newfound perspectives. Really, I've been wanting to have this conversation with Pierina for like 5 or 7 years since I met her at U of T. Of Peruvian and indigenous Quechua roots, Pierina Alessandra Camarena Pukuwanka is currently doing her master's in computer science in Paris, France. Before that, she graduated from the University of Toronto with a Bachelor of Science in statistics. Her experience abroad allowed her to see the Peruvian society and its racist limitations from a new perspective, allowing her to accept, be proud, and cultivate her indigenous heritage through learning Quechua and acquiring as much knowledge as she can on the history and knowledge of her ancestors. She's a mirror that forces you to ask yourself the hard question of who you are and where you're from when you're stripped of everything that's superficial. I know an hour and 49 minutes might seem like a really long time, but it's worth every second. My friends, I don't want to keep you waiting any longer. Let's get it started. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Stephan Dyer podcast. I have Pierina Alessandra Camarena Pukuwanka, a great friend. I met her in Toronto, but we share lots of great things. Pierina, how are you?
Good. I'm cold. It's getting really cold here in France. And I went up to my room and it was at 7 degrees.
No way.
Oh, yeah. And I took a shower and the bathroom was at 13 degrees.
That's incredible. I love it how you know the exact temperature of every room.
Oh, yeah, because like my alarm says like the temperature. So I put on the heater and it goes up to 15. So
Nice.
I sleep like a teddy bear and like.
I love it. So Pieri, welcome. I've been wanting to invite you for a million reasons, and obviously I met you in Toronto years ago, like I don't know, 5-7 years ago, and we immediately struck a connection because we're both of Peruvian descent. Like I never lived in Peru, but my whole family is Peruvian. I've been to Peru like, I don't know, like 30 times, I don't know, a million times. My mom lives there. And when we met here, I started following you on Instagram, on Facebook, and I started seeing really incredible, authentic points of view and like an evolution of your pride for who you are, like a deeper understanding of who you are, fighting for things and for the community that you care about. And I'm like, oh my God, I want to be friends with her. At the time, you were the president of the Latino student.
OLAS.
OLAS.
Yeah, the Organization of Latin American Students. Yes, it was, actually the year that I became president of OLAS, like the year before, OLAS almost collapsed.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like there was some disorganization and like they had lost the office.
Mhm.
It had lost the status of a club. And I met some of my best friends in Canada through OLAS. It gave me like a community of people that were like me, and I just it was a really like the year that I took over OLAS was a really hard year for me for many reasons, but at the same time there wasn't someone to kind of step up for it.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'll do it, but I need like a good team, and that's when I got this friend of mine, Cindy. Well, I met her through that, and then
Yeah.
Alex, who you know,
Yeah.
and we kind of like revamped it, and it was a lot of work, and I messed up many times. Like we did the time we tried to do like the comedy, and like nobody came, and
By
so it
the
was
way, for context,
yeah.
for our listeners, this is the University of Toronto that we're talking about. We both went to U of T, and in 2016 or early 17, Pierina helped us organize a show for my pensando for Juan, myself, and Isaac at U of T, and like Pierina put so much work, like her team, and like we put so much work, and like nobody wanted to come see us.
I felt so bad for you. I was like, oh my God. Yeah, it was but the good thing is like OLS is really active right now.
Yeah.
We that year we launched like a journal, and like they have kind of, it has kind of taken on like over.
Yeah.
And it's great because it gives all of these people, you know, who are Latin America, who come from Latin America and miss Latin America, but also people who are Latin American who grew up in Canada, to like connect and
Yeah.
like build a community, and like the generation of OLS people that I met were, or just like some of the most amazing people I've met, you know, like
Yeah.
there was this girl Lisette who like was just so, she cared so much about like social issues and like gender equality, and she worked for UNICEF, and she was just super amazing. There's this guy Iñaki who right now works for like anti-corruption in Argentina. Like there's just all this list of like people who went through OLAS. Like I even got my ex-boyfriend from OLAS. So you know, it was great. It was great. You just get it all.
I think it's so important to find your own space, your own community and university, especially when U of T is like so big, and it's such a big city like Toronto. It's good to feel seen and heard. It's good to have friends that are like you, not just like taste wise, but from Latin America. So there's lots of things to share. Eventually, you ended up joining my Pensando, my comedy and public speaking school. And one of the first things that you said in the first class, I can never stop thinking about. And your grad show for level 1, to me, has been one of my favorite ever, because you combine comedy and social justice, like really being proud of who you are. And I remember like one thing that you mentioned that struck me is that when you were growing up, your full name is Pierina Alessandra Camarena Pukuwanka, but you would only call yourself Pierina Camarena because Pukuwanka is an indigenous last name. And in Lima, it wasn't like very cool to be indigenous. You attended an American school, and like it was like cooler, or British school, I don't remember, like, or it was cooler to be like white. And Lima has some or a lot of classism. I don't know if it's more classism or racism. What was it like for you? What was it like for you to grow up hiding your second last name?
So I actually attended schools in 3 cities. I was born in Lima, but I moved when I was little, around 4 years old, to a city in the north of Peru called Cajamarca, because my father is a mining engineer. And that school was also, it was like a school where a lot of people who worked for the mine, their kids went there. So it was also an international school. And even though Cajamarca is like in the Andes and there's, you know, a lot of indigenous people, the people in my school were like, the vast majority of them, my classmates, were white. So there I experienced already some level of discomfort with my identity, from things like, there were a couple of like people who would like like straight up bullying from
Yeah.
like, calling out names.
There's a term
Like
in Lima that they use a lot that is like chola.
chola, yeah.
That
And
like
chola could be, I have like a love-hate relationship with the word cholo, because I think that, there's this thing they say in Peru is like, oh, todos somos cholos, we're all cholos, but we're not. Like there's people who are indigenous, and there's people who are white, and there's people who are more Asian. And I think that it's important to acknowledge that we all exist and we all experience different realities. So to say like we're all cholos is like, it's not, because I didn't have the same experience growing up as some of my friends. And I didn't have the same experience growing up than like a little girl in Huancavelica, who like goes to Peru and has a different accent, who goes to Lima and has a different accent. So I think, and it also takes away a little bit of like the pride in calling yourself indigenous, because
yeah.
it's not I'm indigenous, it's like I'm cholo. So it's kind of like post-colonial
Yeah.
identity.
And
So
and
i
like
i
you
don't
said, sometimes people, like you said, love hate, because I know, because my family's from there and I go a lot, that sometimes they use it in like as couples, cholita or cholito, like in a
it's
cute
like
way.
cholito. There's songs that have it, cholita linda. So it's a love hate. It's complex, because that's what comes out with a country that's been born from like colonialism and like the survival of the old identity and so forth. But yeah, so like that was my first experience. That was kind of the friendliest of the schools that I attended. It was mainly like something that was funny for me, like from going to Peru to Canada to France, was just how like, I went from like a 3 out of 10 in attractiveness to like an 8 or 9 here. Like I was born in the wrong place. Like I was like,
Yeah,
I'm so hot here. Like I go
you're
to Tinder and
exotic.
I get all these men.
Yeah,
And but in Peru, I just felt so ugly, like because guys wouldn't really look at me.
yeah,
And like the people who would get the attention were my peers who were white. And there's this like, oh, oh, your baby's so pretty because she got blue eyes. Or like when my little brother was born, and he was born whiter than us, they were like, oh, that's good chance for him. So then I moved to Lima. And there's also this process of like this difference between coming from Lima and coming from like province, and especially province in the Andes. So when I was in Lima, I went to the school which is called Newton. And yeah, like a lot of my peers had like English last names, Italian last names, like German last names. And like, I was Camarena Pukuwanka. Thank God at that time, like they would just use my first name and my last name. So I was like, okay, I'm like free from the bullying here, because I could at least like, like because like
camouflage.
camouflage somehow,
Like me in
like
Canada, like Stephan Dyer, they're like, oh, this guy could be Canadian or
yeah,
what?
yeah. So like there, I was like, maybe they won't notice my features so much. I maybe can camouflage somewhat. And but even like just relating with the people there, it was I remember like that year I had a really, really hard time even making friends, because I didn't know what to talk about with them.
How
I
old
would
were you?
feel I was 12, I think. Yeah, 2007. And like I didn't even know what to talk to them. I didn't know how to relate to them. And just when I was starting to feel a bit more comfortable making friends, then I moved to Arequipa. And fun fact, Arequipa has been the most racist place I have encountered so far in Peru. Yeah. And I think in part, although maybe it's because they were aware of my last name, and also maybe because I was so like my mind was so fucked up with all of these complexes, because I wanted to widen myself out, so going to Arequipa from Newton, I was like, oh yeah, I'm coming from Newton, I'm coming from Lima. Like,
Mhm.
I kind of wanted to play on that cliche. But then when they found out that my last name was Pukuwanka, it was like, fuck, dude, like you come from Newton, but you're Pukuwanka, so like get out of your cloud.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Just for
and
context for our listeners, in Latin America, we use our first and second last name. That is our last name. In Canada, you just use one last name, which is your last name. But in Latin America, your first last name corresponds to your dad's last name, and your second last name corresponds to your mom's last name. So basically, my dad is Luis Dyer Velarde Alvarez. So I'm Stephan Dyer, and my mom's last name is Esther Garcia Pacheco Franco. So Dyer and Garcia Pacheco are the first last names of my parents. So my name is Stephan Dyer Garcia Pacheco. So you could, in Canada, they could just take your first last name, or it's not uncommon that in Latin America, they just call you by your first name and your first last name. So that's why Pierina is saying like, oh, like with Camarena, they would just know it's Camarena, but sometimes your both last names show up. Okay.
Yeah, and they like pasted it at like the door at the beginning of the classes. And I remember when they were going through it, and I just started hearing like Pukuwanka. It was like they found out that I had like AIDS or some shit like that, it's Pukuwanka, like she's Pukuwanka, like and they would do stuff like, I would be chilling there, and then like someone would be like Pukuwanka, but like, to make me feel bad. And I mean, that school was particularly bad because they were mean to almost everyone.
Yeah.
Like whatever defect you had, they would like
that would be your nickname
and give you a nickname about that.
Yeah.
So so that school was particularly traumatizing for me.
To me, it would be diarrhea.
Yeah, no, there was one dude that, he had he was a little bit well built, so he had a little bit of a boob, so they would call him teton, like boobies. And so it's not like I was a saint either, like if someone would, and they gave me the nickname Puku out of Pukuwanka. But I didn't like it because it came with this taint of like trying to make me, trying to put me down because of it. And so I went back to Lima, which was better. I made friends this time. I also made friends in Arequipa, but it was complicated.
Go back to Newton?
Yeah, I went back to Newton basically because I wanted to go abroad. Okay. I've always had this complex relationship with Peru for two reasons. One of them is I never felt like I really fit in because, I grew up with all of these people who especially in Newton and a little bit also in all of this place who there's this there's people with old money and old last names and all of these connections, and my family is from new money. My father grew up in the Andes in a very farming, and he made himself where he is by himself, so I didn't have lots of cousins and stuff like that among that same social status, so I couldn't really relate to them a lot. But at the same time, when I went to once I took when I finished high school, I went to do so I didn't waste time, I went to do a pre-university course for a national university, for sake of it. And a lot of the people who would go there are more humble people, more indigenous people that look like me, but just the way I grew up was so different to them that I also didn't I was not able to relate with them. And also back then I didn't want to relate with them. So I wanted to widen myself out as well. So I just didn't feel like I fit in. And also I have a complex history with Peru because my family and we went through some pretty traumatic situations, that I won't go into details because that's
another podcast.
That's for my therapist and the priest. But I also wanted to kind of get away from that. So I always wanted to study abroad. I was also a really good student growing up. I was always among the top students. I my teachers always loved me. I did went through like 1 year of being a rebel when I was in Arequipa, but because that school just brought up the worst in me. Like I am not proud of many
How
of
many
the
siblings? Do you have any siblings?
two.
Are you
Two.
the eldest?
I'm the oldest. Yes. Yes. So
I hear, you know what I hear? It seems like you're trying, and this sucks, but if you're indigenous and for some reason you got money, or in your case, it seems like you're always trying to justify or like compensate for something. Like
yeah.
you don't belong because you're not white, or you don't have like old money. Like there's this saying in Latin America, oh, the the be- the camarenas of toda la vida, like when a grandmother hears a last name and they immediately try to think if they are the good family of that
Yeah. Yeah.
last
Yeah.
name. So like, oh, the Garcias, the little Garcias de toda la vida, like of all of forever, they've been really good. But if your last name hasn't been like with a lot of money, for it's horrible to eat. Like, why
Yeah,
do
and
we
also
have to?
like you lose your like my family, for example, like I went to my cousin's wedding, and my father is from Huancayo, which is in the center Andes. And like the weddings are like amazing because people come, they dance huaynos, which is like traditional music, and they bring gifts. And like people will bring money, they bring cars, they bring like like it's like this. And they bring food, and it's like this big festivity. But like back then I wasn't like, yeah, that's my background, like
Yeah,
that the music, the history, the language, everything. It's like you want to devoid yourself of that. And there's just so many people, because like the people who were not white in these places, they usually came from like entrepreneurs. So like someone that, I don't know, started to work with making bricks and stuff like that. They built a company, so now they were able to send their kids. But like people who come from like, or my father, mining. So that's an industry where like you can still make some money and be able to afford to send. But like there was no one who was like working in banking, or
yeah,
like things like that, because it's a very, so I always wanted to leave Peru. I also wanted, I thought that I would get a good education abroad. So I actually went back to Lima alone, in that my parents stayed in Arequipa because my father kept working there. And I lived with my grandmother. And it's interesting because my grandmother lives in this district called La Molina, but she lives in a more humble part of La Molina.
yeah,
And I was always super ashamed of them, of like my peers knowing exactly where I lived. So
yeah,
so
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, I never got bullied at Newton. It was more subtle, it was way more like just these people hang out here, the popular
mhm.
ones, and the not so pop. And like I was in this group of like, there were three gays. Like my Angelica was in my group, and she was like super smart, but also weird. We were like the weird kind of. I loved my group. They're my best friends until now.
Yeah,
And but I was in just like it. They start. It was interesting because like the popular ones, they were mainly white, except like three people. Um, and even now, when they get together, it's their group, and
yeah.
then
I
it's this group, and then
to, to me, Lima is a very special case because, as you said, it's not like in your face discrimination. It's like
yeah,
very subtle. So, for example, they'll have their own clubs. Like
yeah.
they'll have their own club. Like my parents, they grew up in el club regatas.
Oh
And
yeah, that's all my high school friends are
yeah,
they're there. Like
and some Peruvians listening to this might be like, oh, your parents are super fresas or whatever, like pitucos or whatever. But
that's how my grandparents, like, they put them in, and their entire lives was that club. So if you're
Yeah.
not in that club, you're not a member, you're not in it. That
Yeah.
was their whole, or like they'll have their own beaches, like gated beaches in
Oh
the
yeah.
south
And you can't go
of
in.
Lima,
And
called Asia, by the way,
yeah.
like the beaches in the south, and you can't go in unless you're a member, because it's a gated community, unless you have a friend who invites you. So it's like, and then like there's like El Club Nacional, there's El Club this, El Club that, and it's like
Like
all
it,
memberships.
yeah, same thing in Arequipa. They have it with well, Club Internacional is a bit more mixed, but like like because Arequipa has a significant white population as well. So I think that because they are a province and because they are in the Andes, they always try to like differentiate themselves from
Yeah.
the other Arequipa, like people from Arequipa, and also people from Arequipa. There's a lot of immigration from Cusco and from Puno. So then there's like, no, we're the real Arequipa. Those ones are from Puno. So
Yeah.
that's like Arequipa so far has been the most racist place I have been out
Yeah.
of Peru.
I think it's
So yeah.
listen, I'm not saying that Peruvians are inherently horrible people, or if you grew up in this club or in that club or in whatever, or if you went to this school, like they're horrible people. I'm just saying I've been to many countries, and Lima is by far one of the most classist societies or cities that I've seen. Not not just, it's not like flat out discrimination like in your face, but like you said, it's more subtle, and you can see it. It's horrible because the more indigenous population, like the nannies
Yeah.
are indigenous. They're dressed up in uniform.
Yeah.
If you go to a playground or a club, or, and by club I mean like a tennis club or a golf club or whatever, you'll see the kids playing with the nannies, not that much the parents, and the nannies will be mostly or 100% indigenous and in uniforms, and it seems like you're looking at a 1930s movies, like a movie in the south of the US. It's a very weird dynamic. And
Yeah.
I've spoken to some people about this, and they're like, yeah, I mean, it sucks, but it like for example, in some of the places, they're like, yeah, it sucks that all the people that are working here are indigenous, but at least we came here and were able to provide for some jobs. Like, it's a very complex dynamic, but
Yeah.
I don't know. So
Yeah, and like it's that's why it's so complicated because like not even going too far here in France. Right now I'm working as a nanny. So and I work for this. France is also very segregated.
yeah,
More than Toronto. That's why I love Canada. It's so multicultural, but I feel like it's particularly Toronto. I don't know about the rest of Canada, but
yeah,
Toronto,
I
like
think it's
even
Toronto.
downtown, like there was once when I worked as like a driver of food, and like I would hand out food in like these nice condos to like an Asian dude, an Indian dude, a white dude,
Yeah,
like whatever dude, like or girl.
yeah,
But like in France, when you are in Paris, like actual Paris, the 20 arrondissements, not the banlieues, or certain banlieues, it's really white. Like you go to the playground and you count, like in the playground where I take the kids, I have seen two black kids once. The rest are all white.
yeah,
And all the nannies again are usually from like Africa or like foreign nannies. So I was one day playing with the little girl and that I take care of, and it was this Lego piece, and there were two little dolls, and they were the same doll. I mean, same face, just like different colors. One was black and one was white. And she asked me, like, do you find that she's beautiful? And I said, yeah, it's a doll. Like they're made beautiful and they're the same. They have the same face. And she said, I don't think she's beautiful because her hair's black and her skin is brown. This is a little girl of 5 years old in France. You
wow,
would think that France is beyond that, but it's not. And I thought about it, and I was like, well, that makes sense because her school is white. And, like all her peers are white. There are like two kids who are mixed race, so like black and white, but they're like pretty white-ish, like I guess the white gene was pretty strong. And then all all the people of color that she sees are nannies or like the people who like clean. So like
Yeah.
she associates. So that was the other thing, that was the whole like, oh, I went from like a 3 to a 9. And like people associate beauty with what's powerful, with what's going to give you power, with what's going to give. So you want your kids to look like what gives you power.
Yeah.
And in Latin America, what gives you power is looking whiter or like non-indigenous. So whereas like abroad, that's not as associated with that
Yeah.
particular ethnicity.
And I and
So
I think it's one of the things that will help is seeing ourselves represented on the
yeah,
big screen
yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
Hollywood. Like this diversity thing, it's not just like diversity that now everyone
It's
wants to,
really
no,
important.
it's
It's
super
really
important
important.
because I was like in 2008, I did a 4-month program at Second City, and I realized because I performed on the main stage a couple times, not through like the main Second City, but through my program, which was called the Diversity and Inclusion Fellowship. And the reason why this was created, in fact, Diona from episode 1, my first guest of the podcast, she was a director. And the reason why it was created is because most spots on TV are for white people. Most
Yeah,
movies in Hollywood, the leads are white people. Second City, traditionally on the stages, had been white people. And the audience still, right now, the majority is white. And they've been shifting this and having a little more diversity and inclusion on their stages. But it's so important because I see a Latino guy there and I'm like, fuck, that like he's one of us, that
yeah,
that could be me. Like it's possible. And I think it's incredibly important that our kids travel as well.
yeah.
They travel, they get to be out of their comfort zone and see other places because the people like this little 5-year-old girl in France that you were with, she's not inherently like a horrible person. It's just what she's seen.
Yeah, that's her. Like I think like one of the things that helped me a lot being in Toronto, because it was not like, oh, I'm in Toronto, now I'm proud.
Yeah.
Like even like the first year, I remember I was like talking with two friends, and they asked me what was my second last name, and I lied. I gave them the second last name of my mom, which is Vargas. Because I was just so ashamed, it
Yeah.
was so ingrained in me.
Yeah.
Like so like it was something that was very organic, more like, just being constantly exposed to all of this diversity. And also one of the things that I really like about U of T is that like, we have these Asian people who are like super rich and like ride a Lamborghini. But like I also lived with, for example, this guy who's like mother was like I think a waitress, and his father like, like very very humble origins,
Yeah.
like money wise Canadian. And like he was trying to become a doctor to get into he got into med school, and so did his brother, his twin. But like, like just being surrounded with all sorts of people whose parents are able to pay for their money for school, but also people who have to get OSAP and have to work to get things going. And just like being seen just for who you are,
Yeah.
like obviously it's always we're never able to like take away the whole ethnicity of the person, but
For
I
sure.
felt more free, like I even became way more social. I became way more comfortable like in talking and meeting new people. And well, yeah, it definitely helped in my self-esteem at that
Yeah.
time, that suddenly I was like, oh, men are now interested in me, and these are attractive men. Oh God.
Yeah. And
So
maybe it was super interesting that the guys who you thought were attractive were maybe white.
yeah, Yeah.
Anglo-Saxon white kids that maybe if you went back home, they would be like, wow, Pierina. And you maybe did not control this. This is just the way you were wired because you grew up
Yeah.
in that society.
Yeah. And also my taste in people changed with time. Like people that before I thought were so beautiful, then I was like, yeah, you're actually not that hot. And the other way around, I'm like, you know what? You're actually a very handsome man that I've never seen. I never realized just how attractive you are.
Yeah.
And so that was it was subtle. It was, it started from like, yeah, that's my last name. I'm okay with it. Like, I
Yeah.
accept it.
And
To
nobody
like,
cares here.
yeah, who cares? To
nobody-
like, you know what? It's been so fucking shitty that I had to like feel ashamed for this. That at some point, I got lemon juice and I put it on my skin to try to whiten myself out. Like,
No.
that was the degree to which I was so fucked up. I don't know if everybody was as fucked up as I was, but that was degree of me. And
I bet that this is exactly the reason why I created the podcast, is because these conversations give a voice to those people who have lost it. Like, they're so
yeah,
in the mud that they can't even see it.
yeah, because
You don't
going
have
away
self-awareness.
and just seeing it from like outside, it's something that it's because I would go back home and I would try to have these conversations with my parents. I'm like, so what do you identify yourself as? Like, what do you identify yourself as? An indigenous person? Like my mother, because like, do you identify as indigenous? I mean, like, that's your last name, that's your ethnicity. And she's like, well, I'm mixed. And I'm like, no, you think Barack Obama says I'm mixed? He says I'm fucking black. Why do we have to say I'm mixed? So like let's own an indigenous, like, so it's
Yes.
my dad is more like, he's more pragmatic and like, stop talking about races, just fucking get your degree and get a job. So he doesn't care about that. But but for me it's a very important conversation to have, because I think it's just so sad that the culture gets lost, that the language gets lost.
Yeah.
And I think that is not just a loss for us as a group, but I think that's a loss for like people, because this is a continent that had great civilizations, that have amazing cosmology, amazing archaeology, lots of knowledge and wisdom, that is getting lost because people, like, the language is so beautiful. I took some Quechua classes last year, and it's a beautiful language that has, like, you get to understand the culture as well when you start learning the language.
Yeah.
And the idea of the language getting lost, like, absolutely breaks my heart. And it's one of the things that I would like to contribute eventually. But like, so that for me is just so sad, and that's just Quechua. Then there's like Mara, there's Shipi, there's like all of these languages that,
Yeah.
And yes, that is like, it's natural that languages get extinct, but like,
Especially with
a whole
globalization.
continent, a whole continent of knowledge from like millennia. Like, there's like one of the most ancient cities in the world, like Caral in Lima, that's like the same date as like some Egyptians, like Mesopotamia. So this is like millennia of knowledge that has been lost, or like, we haven't retrieved all that. And it's not just for like indigenous people to feel proud, but like, we're humanity, we share. Like, I mean, right now I'm doing yoga and meditation, and I'm like learning about chakras, and that's not from this part of the world. And
Yeah.
and but it helps me, and it's beautiful knowledge that has been shared. So this is also knowledge that could be shared from that part of the world to the rest. And like, some, they're starting to do that a little bit with ayahuasca and stuff, but I think sometimes they're fucking it up more than actually helping. But so that's why I became a lot more like, not just like, okay, I'm gonna be okay with my last name, but kind of talk about it more, share about it on social media, because that's my only platform. And and have those conversations when I can. Sometimes I have them too much, and like people close up.
I love
So
it. I love it.
I had to learn to like regulate a little bit, which I am still learning. Because when I get into when I get into a thing, like I talk about it all the time, you know, like lately I've been learning a lot about spirituality and astrology and all of this stuff. So I talk about that all the time. And I'm like, give me your date, give me your date of birth. I'm gonna tell you how your Venus work and like retrograde and all this stuff. So I have like these phases, but like, but the identification of my ethnicity, maybe what will pass is like how intense and like up in your face I am all the time, but it's something that's going to be my life forever, you know. I'm always going to be trying to learn about it and share about it and like do whatever I can in my little possibilities to like
You have
help it
to.
stay alive.
You have to, and we're grateful, because if there weren't people like you, maybe these things would get lost. Like, for example, I'm coming to terms with who I am as a person. Like growing up, I tried so hard for people to know that I was Costa Rican, and in like, because that's where I was born. But really, if you think about it, like my entire family, generations back, are Peruvian. But I didn't really feel Peruvian because I never lived in Peru. And and if I went to Peru, they were like, dude, you're not Peruvian. You've never lived here. But in Costa Rica, it's like, you're not really Costa Rican because your parents are Peruvian, you know? And then I moved to El Salvador, and for sure I'm not, because you speak differently. And Mexico, then I moved to Mexico, it's the same. And I used to get really pissed when people here are like, oh, you've been in Canada for 17 years? You're Canadian.
Oh
And
yeah.
I'm like, no, I'm
Oh
not
no.
Canadian. And now I don't really know what I am. I don't really care as much, but
Yeah.
it used to really get to me. I would love to to know how my roots, wherever I'm from, really affect me and have made me who, like the person that I am. But now I'm more just preoccupied with being a good father and husband, and
Yeah.
enjoying my day. I want to just go back a little bit, because we were talking about something that fascinates me and also makes me really happy in a really kind of bad way. But when people who are like so stuck in this, like, oh, I'm like royalty in Latin America because my last name is the last name of an ex-president, or because like my last name means a lot. And a lot of people come to Toronto thinking that that's going to mean something here,
Oh no.
and it doesn't mean shit. And it's hard, not just on a ego basis, but for me it was hard, not because I had a prominent last name, because I don't. They're like millionaire Dyers in Peru, but they're not my family. But it was because I was nobody here, and in the sense that I didn't have family, I didn't have uncles, I didn't have nobody who could really help me get a job and who could make me feel supported. It was just me. And that part is hard. But a lot of people come and they're like, oh my God, like I say that I am Hector Gonzalez Blanco, which maybe Gonzalez Blanco means something in Ecuador, for example. And here you're fucking nobody. And
Yeah.
and like you go to a club and you still have to line up like everyone. Like if you want to buy a car, like you have to pay for parking everywhere. You have to get not pay someone to get you your driver's license. You have to get your driver's license. Like you got to do your own taxes. You don't have a maid. You don't have someone to clean your shit up, your laundry. Like you really find out who you are
Yeah.
here because you're stripped
Yeah.
of many layers that you had back home. And it's not easy for me, for you, for nobody. But if you come with that mentality that, oh, I'm like rich back home, like they should bow to me here, it's going to destroy you. And a lot of people come here and then they go back because they don't like who they are like when they've been stripped of all these accolades.
Yeah, of all that extra privilege that they have there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. And like for me it was the opposite effect because I was stripped from like the oppression almost, you know, like I was like, wow, I felt like it levels up a little bit the playing
Yeah.
field
Yeah.
between the others, and I was happy because for me when it took me a little bit further up.
Yeah.
So
Especially getting jobs and getting opportunities and in university and like dating. Like at U of T, I still don't know how, and I don't care how much money all my friends have or
yeah,
their parents have, because I may not even have ever dated, like, I mean, known who their parents are. Back home, it's not uncommon for your
oh yeah,
mom to ask, oh, you're dating this person? What's their last name? What part of the city do they live in? And what's the other question? And what school did they go to? And with those like moms or dads, they try to like box in people to see if they're a good candidate, you
yeah,
know?
if they're a
Or
good fit.
yeah. So
Yeah,
that really fascinates me because it really like makes or breaks you. I mentioned that I remember that we talked that here in Canada, you really started to understand mental health and you were actually diagnosed. You started to see the impact that some of your experiences in Peru
oh
had
yeah.
when you were a child. How was that process of discovery and coping with it when you when in Latin America mental health is not very talked about?
Yeah, it's like, oh my God, it was, it's funny because when I think about Canada, I loved I want to go back to I'm going back to Toronto. Like it's just I'm manifesting it. But yeah, because now I'm all witchy and like I want to be a witch. But I have so beautiful memories, and some of my best people come from are in Canada, but I also have really, really, really dark memories. And because when I went to like I was always a really good student. And so I expected myself to like, because I was like, if I was already a good student now, I'm gonna like put like a 200% in, and I'm gonna ace everything. And suddenly, like when I arrived to Canada, I started seeing myself behave and react in a way that I didn't understand. I would have night terrors, nightmares. I would get paralyzed in bed. So I would wake up and I was not able to move for hours. So sometimes I would miss class because of that, but then I would feel shame and guilt. And I didn't know how to open up to people. So like this whole thing kind of just kept escalating. And like one of the really, really bad parts about mental health is that um the stigma and like feeling that people will not understand you doesn't let you open up to other people to say like this is how I'm feeling. So for my first year, like my own diagnosis was like you were lazy and not like you didn't work hard enough, so you need to like buckle up. And I tried that the year after, but it just kept getting worse. So I experienced like my first full-on depression in my second year in the winter. And that's when I got access to, well, I called CAPS, which is Counseling and Psychological Service. I think they changed their name. And it's really hard to get an appointment there. Like I was on the waiting list for like 3 months, I think. Like I called in February and I got in May. And
Wow.
I started with a diagnosis of ADHD because that's what like my registrar checked in on me because he was like, some of your because I registered for like a course in my first year which is called Train One, and it's so funny because to get into that course you needed to write an essay, and like I remember the first day I was in class. And like our prof, she would say like, you guys were probably some of the best students in your class, so now you've been selected to be here and like so ever. And later, when I was paralyzed in bed for like 3 hours and I was not able to attend lecture, like I just felt so like I don't fit into this elite group, but I know that I was one of these people. What's going on with me?
Yeah.
So my registrar was like, I think this is common with ADHD. You should check that out. And I really had a hard time concentrating. And I got a diagnosis, and I was diagnosed with ADHD, but I didn't want to take the medicine. So I tried with like natural ways of getting better, but like it wasn't consistent. And all of this time, like I dealt with this alone. Like I wouldn't share it with people. And it just kept getting worse and worse and worse. And in 2016, I took a psychology class that was, I had to do an assignment where I had to write about my past. So like I started, the professor said that like, if there's anything that's a year or older that still makes you cry, it means that you need to process that. So I was like, well, I have memories that are like over 20 years old and they fucking made me cry. So, and I dream about them in night terrors. So I should probably write about that. So I had never talked about this with anyone, but I wrote it. And I absolutely collapsed. Like my night terrors came back. I would cry all of a sudden. My boyfriend at the time, he was like, what's going on? And I didn't tell him even. I couldn't even tell him like, you know what, I'm going to therapy, because I was so ashamed of that. Like it took 2 years into the relationship for me to say, I'm going to therapy. And that was the first time I was put on antidepressants just to get through finals. But after that, the year after, I got my life. I had a concussion. I had a bike accident and I had a concussion and I hit my head and I was not able to do anything. To like even reading would make me dizzy and make me nauseous and my head would hurt. So I had to take time off school. And that was kind of like the needle that broke the camel's back, in that like my mental health went like to the bottom. And I remember that one day I was in my ex's house and I was on the couch and like I was this burrito of like, I was like, I have no will for anything. Like I'm just here. And he was like, we need to get you to a doctor. Like this is not okay. So he was actually amazing with me at that time. I'm just so thankful for him for how loving and understanding and supportive he was during that time, because he put me on his family doctors. He got me into his family doctor, and this doctor prescribed me the antidepressants that I'm on until now. And through this doctor, I did therapy for the first time that was addressing trauma. And that therapist shared with me something that made me feel so validated. And she told me like, you know what you're going through is actually not uncommon. A lot of people who come from traumatic pasts that like have been exposed to like reminders or are still in the place where whatever happened, you're kind of like in a survival mode, but it works because they need it. But when you go to a place when you're safe, your body and your being doesn't know how to react.
That's incredible.
And like you kind of collapse. So she would tell me that like, you know, she has all these people from like Africa or Mexico that come from difficult circumstances, that when they're in Canada, they kind of collapse and they're like, but you're in Canada, you have all of these opportunities, take advantage of them. And like that was one of the things that was really hard for me, because my parents were sending me with money and it's expensive as an international student. So I was feeling so ashamed and I was feeling guilty and I felt like I couldn't take time off. It was just horrible. And like that concussion in a way was a blessing in disguise, because it gave me time to like take some therapy there. And I did like group sessions for trauma. So like it was the first time being with people who had a history of childhood trauma and just being like, and they would like relate behaviors that I had that were like, oh my God, like this is actually like, yes, you also get paralyzed in bed. I know how that feels. It's horrible. I feel like I can move. Oh my God, yes, I always have fucking anxiety every day. I wake up and there's this doom in my stomach and because like no, I remember I went to talk with a priest, and he recommended me to have like a journal of gratitude, to like, just think about all the good things that God was giving me. And I told him, yes, but it's not that. It's like I feel like I don't deserve those good things. And then he was like, you need to see a professional. Like he was like, this is beyond me. Like, you need to work with a professional, because I was in a really, really, really bad place. So I started therapy for the first time that was focused on trauma in 2017, around like the summer, June. And like one of the things that was really important for my well-being was to be financially independent. Like, being in Canada, because of the cost of university, I was financially dependent on my parents. And I wanted to kind of break free from that, because it was a reminder of like, like darker times. So I wanted to kind of like do a cut with, but it was really hard. So that's why in 2018, I decided, like, I found out about this school here in France, that it's free. It's completely free. And the only difficulty is getting in. And it's recognized here in France. It's really good. It's non-conventional. There's no classes, no professors. You learn by yourself and with
What?
peers, because software is always having something new. So you're always learning on the job
What's
when
it
you're
called?
working in
The school and the program.
42. It's called 42. And it's you get a degree in like I forgot that it's in French, but it's basically computer science. And so like you're always learning on the job. So that's kind of like the mode of the school. It's like that's what your job's gonna be. So like learn how to learn. So and the PC,
Incredible.
like the entrance exam was amazing. Like it was like 4 weeks of learning C that I didn't know from scratch. And you have like this PDF of like 20 exercises that you have to do, and then you submit them, and then the machine corrects you, and 3 students correct you. Well, 3 other candidates correct you, and but if you, for example, have number 1 bad, then you get a 0, and you have to redo it until you have 1, 2, 3, 4, up to like 70 or 80%, all perfect. And until you get that, you cannot move on. So that you have like a bunch of PDFs like that, day by day by day. And then on Fridays, there's like exams. Every Friday there's exams. And on the weekend, there's like individual projects and group projects. So like in the piscine, people work 15 hours, 12 hours every day, just like coding. And I loved it, because I was able to like I was so excited to come to France. Like I decided, and it was like my decision, I worked all the summer in Canada at this restaurant, Fresh, and I saved every little dollar that I could. And I applied, and I got in, and I told my parents, yeah, I'm going to France. And they were like, with what money? And I'm like, so yeah, I've been saving up. And I already bought my ticket, so I'm going. And
what did they say?
Oh my God, my mom cried, because she wanted me to get a PR and all this thing in Canada. And I was like, I'm gonna come back, but I need to be financially independent. I need these things, and like it's important for me. I need to take a break from all this cycle here at U of T. I need for my well-being.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to do computer science in Canada, but to like get the degree there, it was ridiculously expensive. So thank God they decided to support me, because when I come in August 2018 here to France, I take the entrance exam. I do very well. It was a bit challenging, because that was the time that I broke up my relationship of 4 years, so that was pretty sad. But then I come back to Peru and to do all the visa, which like the French administration is the worst nightmare in this. It's horrible, fucking French. Okay, well, let's not talk about the French. So
You're not gonna be listening to this podcast, that's for sure. Don't worry.
And well, I always tell them, like, your administration sucks. They're like, you want to stay here? No. Like, no. Like, I'm very honest, and they're like, yeah, it sucks. And so I applied for the visa with this school. And that was one of the reasons why I went to the France campus instead of the US campus, because you could get a student visa. So my plan was like, I get a student visa, I'm able to work because I don't have to pay for school. I can sustain myself, you know? So I had it all planned out. And because my school is non-conventional and they haven't heard about it in the French embassy in Peru, they denied my student visa. And they only offered me a visitor visa. My school emailed the embassy saying like, yo, we're a legit school. Like, look at all that. But I think it was too late, that they had already made the decision. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take it. You know, I'll take it and I'll try to change it in France. So I arrived to France. This whole thing took longer than I expected. So I started school late. Like, they started in November. And I came like late December, something like that. So I was already behind, like, the people who had started with me. And then, like, when I was here in France, it was very complicated because I had my savings who were starting to run out. My parents were like, okay, we're going to help you. But I'm like, that was what I was trying to cut out. You know, this was the reason why I came. And then when I was in school, I was like, I need to try to find a job, but I didn't have a visa, so I couldn't legally work. And I was so scared of working illegally, and I didn't even know how to do it. You know, my French was like, bonjour, merci, oh, très joli. And so like the language was not like, I wasn't strong on it. And like, I also needed to figure out how to like change this visa. And like, they didn't really know how to do it in my school. So like, when I was in school, I was thinking about trying to get a job and all of this. When my mental health again, you know, declined. And I was so frustrated because I was like, I came because of this. Yeah. And like, all the time I would think, if I could just have that visa, then I could work and I could, like, you know, get an apartment that's not, I had like a shared room with like, well, at the end I got really along with my roommates, but like, it was really hard, you know. Again, I had like this whole like anxiety in the mornings, getting paralyzed, like, and I was like, but I did so well in the piscine. Why am I doing so slow now? So I started to try to get like a rhythm by the end of the year. And in 2020, it starts with the French doing a strike. So they paralyzed all public transit. And I used to live at the north of Paris, like banlieue, because I could not afford living in actual Paris. And it would take me like 30 minutes to get to school with metro, but because they stopped the metro and we had to take a bus, it would take me 2 hours to get to school. And the thing was that, like, to go back at night, the bus to go to my school, it was me and like 30 men, you know. And like the area where I live, it's like there's a lot of immigrants. There's like a lot of like Arab and black men and like and it was me and this 30 men. Sometimes there was like one lady. So I wouldn't feel like super safe, you know, riding in that bus at night. So I decided, you know what, I'm not going to go to school. I'll wait until this strike is over. And then when the strike is about over, I get my first illegal job at a restaurant.
What restaurant?
It was a Mexican restaurant that was owned by Bangladeshi people. So. And by then I had like learned a little bit more French, so I was able to waitress in French.
You could say tacos, chilaquiles, and
yeah, tacos, chilaquiles, everything. And but like I actually did a good job because I could speak English, I could speak Spanish, and I could speak enough French.
And
So like
Bengali.
when customers would come from all these languages, I was able to like, like talk to all of them, and they gave a lot of tips. But then, I tell the owner, the lady, like, look, I can only work up to 20 hours because my priority is school. And she took the whole visa situation that I had as an excuse, and she was like, no, I can't hire you because of your visa, blah 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 blah. And then I was like, okay, well, this is the hours I worked. And then she wanted to pay me less. In the end, she didn't pay me. It was like a mess. So I lost that job. And so then I went back to school. I found also a job at a startup doing some data visualization. It was a blockchain, but then the COVID hit. And because it was about investing in Bitcoin, with the COVID, the market went down. And so I lost my job. And like it was COVID time, so school closed, so I couldn't go to school. And I was, during that time, I during the quarantine, like I had met like my boyfriend from last year, like actually on Valentine's Day. And so we ended up spending the quarantine with him because he was taking care of his father. His father had cancer, terminal cancer. So he was the main caretaker of him and the nurses. And like, like because of the COVID and stuff, we were like, well, we can't really see like each other, like, go in my house, come back, because we're always exposed. So then like the plan was like, okay, come here for a few days. I ended up staying the whole quarantine. And actually his father died the day of my birthday. No. So it was intense. Okay. My year just kept getting more and more and more intense. And then, like the quarantine ended, seemed like school was going to open, but I needed to work because parallel to this, my father was working at a mine from Barrick, which is actually a Canadian company. Yeah. But they were closing their offices in Peru. No. So then my father was without a job, so he couldn't support me. So I needed to find a job. And I found a job as a nanny. So I was like, okay, this is my plan. I'm going to work full time for this 2 months, because it was like a 2-month contract as a nanny. I'm going to learn skills to do freelancing. So then when like I finish my nanny job, I will have enough money saved up and I will go to school and do freelancing. So that was like my plan. And then that was going to be June, July. And in June, Rambo escapes from the house of my ex.
Rambo is Pierina's cat. And
yeah, so Rambo is the love of my life. I got Rambo in 2016.
In Toronto.
I always wanted a cat and my parents would never let me have one. So at some point I was like, you know what? I feel ready to take care of another creature. So I adopted him, and it was like love at first sight. And like,
you had Rambo at your boyfriend's house in Paris or wherever. Yes. In France. Yes. And this is what I was so interested in. We've been talking consistently since you left Toronto, like once a month or whatever, on Instagram. And you mentioned that you were posting posters, redundantly, on the streets of France, of Paris, with pictures of Rambo, your cat, so that you could find him. And it was very hard. It was very traumatic, a very rough time. And eventually you were still at your boyfriend's that you ended up breaking up with, but you still wanted to find Rambo.
Oh my God.
You had to go back to your own place. And it was
really hard. You know why? Because, well, first of all, like Rambo, like, I got him when I was in Canada, and I was like, well, I had my ex from that time who was, I loved him a lot and so forth. But like Rambo was like my constant among all variables. Yeah. And like there's something about, maybe like Juan might be able to understand, because I see that he has a really big connection with Deo. But like the love that you can share with an animal, it becomes so unconditional. And you start developing this connection where like it's like you don't need to talk to like understand each other. So like when I was feeling sad, I would go back home, like back in Canada, like I would go back home, I was feeling sad, and Rambo knew, and he would jump into my bed and come cuddle with me, and he would start licking me. Like there were times where like I would actually go to Rambo, like he was my therapist, and I would like, you know what, Rambo, I'm thinking about this, and then I start crying, and he would jump on my lap, and he would like put his paw here, when I was crying.
Yeah.
So like Rambo was like, whenever I would go to like the cottage or someone's house, I would bring Rambo with me. I was like,
I know.
I was like, he's my child. Like I come with Rambo. This is my package. You take me with him or you don't take me.
Yeah.
So when I went to France, I was like, there was not even the question that he was not going to come with me. I did all the paperwork or everything. We took the flight and he went with me on like my lap. And like, I just like, like Rambo, like,
and he was with you
is,
through the worst and the best times.
Yes, he's the love of my life. And so I was like, when he escaped the first day, when my like Lucas messages me and he's like, I haven't seen Rambo in 3 hours. And there had been a little incident in the house where he got scared and he escaped. And when I came back, I was like, oh, he might be in the house hiding somewhere. I looked everywhere and I couldn't find him. And I was like, well, maybe we'll find him in like 2 or 3 days. But like, as days kept getting longer, like I collapsed so much. And for Lucas, it was so hard as well for him because his father had died recently, who he took care of. Well, he was, because taking care of someone who has terminal cancer is really hard, and like that was one of the reasons why I was like, yeah, I want to see this guy, because it takes a certain character to take care of someone that's in you have to clean the person, you have to help them go to the bathroom, wash them, like everything. And he has 2 siblings, and it was him taking care of him. The siblings will come sometimes and then go home. And also his grandmother had died around that time. Another aunt had died. He was a little bit not super happy with his siblings because of how they didn't really put the same support when the father was alive and he needed everything. So he was going through his own grief.
Yeah.
And then he loses my cat. And then well, he didn't lose my cat, but while he was in the whole Brown escaped after an incident with him. So, and then I am with my own grief that he can't really understand, because for him it's like, it's a cat. My dad just fucking died, like, get over your cat. And like, I was like, but you don't understand. I love him like my child. And he's like, Pierina, it's a cat. So like, it was just so much for him to handle that, there were times where he was like, I need you to leave at least for some days because I can't handle your presence. And for me, it was like, oh my God, I can't handle my presence. But we were 2 people who were going through their own grief, and it was so hard for us to like be in the same place. But I lived like over an hour away, so I was like, if I leave, I can't find Rambo. So I had to stay there, and like it just just the energy of the place would start getting more and more charged up. So it was not good either for him or for me. I stayed there until August, and it was also very lonely because I live in Navarino. Most of my friends were not there, and a lot of the friends that I made in France had left already France. So only like my best friend at the time, he would come and help me like look for Rambo, and he was really supportive during that time. But besides that, like my main support systems were abroad. So I was very alone, and like going through like the loss of Rambo and everything also brought up the fact that I hadn't fully closed a cycle of a past relationship. So like I also had to work through grieving that and at the same time as grieving Rambo, and like that whole process of grief was very complicated and very painful.
On
But
top
then
of the
also,
university, 2020,
yeah,
your dad, his dad. Oh my
and then
God.
and then and then like I needed to like my my job as a nanny finished, and I was like, I need to find a job. And my visa, I had done the change of status in 2019 in November, and they told me, okay, we're gonna examine your dossier, which is like the documents I handed, and like they gave me this paper to wait. That was November 2019. We were already like August or something 2020, and nothing, nothing had happened. So I went to the prefecture, which is where you go and ask these questions, and I'm like, so what's the deal with this? How do I do? And they basically tell me, well, keep waiting, and if you do not receive a message by October, which because my récépissé expired in November, then come back to renew your paper to keep waiting. And I was like, and so I was trying to find a job as a nanny, and even getting a stupid job as a nanny was hard because all parents wanted to have a contract and declare, and I'm like, I cannot declare because I need to work illegally. So I was like, I can't find a job. I put up an ad as an English teacher, and this woman reaches out to me saying, yes, I want you to teach like my two daughters, and like she offered me like 600 euros per week for like this amount of hours, and I'm like, this is great. It turned out to be a scam.
No. But how did they?
So
but you weren't paying them; they were paying you. How was that?
So how it worked was like she told me, I'm gonna send you a check with like half of your first payment, so 300 euros, and also like 1,000 euros for this computer that I want to order for my daughters so that they could help, like they could learn. And I was like, okay. I didn't have a bank account because I didn't have a visa because blah, 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 blah. So so my friend helped me, and he was like, yeah, like have them send it to me. So then they sent the check, and they would always be like, did the check arrive? And I was like, I would think, okay, well, they sent a lot of money, so they want to make sure that everything's there. So then when the check arrived, they're like, is the check cash? Is the check cash? Because we need to like buy the laptops, blah, 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 blah. So then like my friend tells me, like put me in contact with them. I'll deal with them. And then what ended up happening was like, the dude was like, we need to send at least an advance to like reserve the computers or whatsoever. So then my friend sent him 300 euros from his own money to reserve the computers. And then the dude that was talking with him, who was the accountant, asked for more money. And then my friend was like, fuck, this is a scam. And it was a scam. Of course, it was a scam.
But they sent you the original money.
They sent me a check, but you know what they did? They probably stole a check from someone. So then the check was going to bounce either way. And they got my friend to send the money to like reserve a computer that never existed. So it was this really stupid scam, and we both fell for it. But there went to 300 euros. And
we got the 300 euros.
They got it.
So that's what you guys lost, pretty much.
Yes.
You guys never got any cash.
Yes. So then, and then I just kept trying to get interviews for nanny jobs, and I would go, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you're great, we love you, but we need to declare." And it was in August when I started therapy, because I had reached a point where like I was like, you know what? I just want to be with Rambo, like even if it's in spirit. Like I was like there was a point where I was like, I can't, like I was so scared of life, because I was like, my life has been fucking hard until now. And then the one thing that I was like, you can touch anything, but Rambo, don't fucking touch him. He's my precious. And then he escapes, and like, I was raised Catholic, so I would pray. And I was like, what's your deal? Like, do I pray for you for a miracle? Do you only give strength? Like, how do I relate to you? Like, I was so lost. I'm like, why would you help me now? Like, I was like, I didn't understand like God's selective intervention, to like help some people and not others.
Yeah.
So I was like, what if this is going to be my life? Like it's been 26 years of not having peace. Like what if it's like 20 more years of this? Like this is bullshit. I don't want to live this life. Like I felt, but I couldn't. For me, it was like, okay, but if I commit suicide, that makes my family, who already has so much shit to deal with that as well. So that would also be, but I don't want to live. I felt condemned to live.
Yeah.
It was this horrible. I was like, why was I bored? Like, and that's when I started therapy, and I found a nice life hack, which is to do therapy with a Peruvian therapist. So we do it like this, like, through video call. And it works for me because of the exchange rate. So it's more affordable. And I've been having ever since like weekly therapy sessions. And that helped. But also I mean, you would say by coincidence, but I don't believe in coincidence anymore. I like started to like try to find videos to distract myself, like, because I would always think about Rambo and like in life and like doom and and
was this YouTube rabbit hole how you ended up with animal communication?
oh, so when I was looking for Rambo, because what I have done to look for Rambo is absolutely everything you can imagine. I have slept on the street 3 times with his kitty litter to try to track him. I have slept in parks. I have gone out looking for him at 3 a.m. in the morning, 4 a.m. in the morning, 2 a.m. in the morning. I have put posters in a radius of probably 2 kilometers. I have posted in several Facebook groups. I went into a battle with the agency that registers animals, because it turned out that all the paperwork I did to bring Rambo to France was not enough for him to be registered in France. So I had to like register him on top of that. And when I tried to register, they were like, the cat needs to be present. And I'm like, the cat is lost. That's why I want to register him. So I had tried everything. And somebody mentioned, I had tried this other method that was like calling the name of your cat every 20 minutes for 5 minutes for 3 hours for 10 days. So my neighbors hated me. Well, Lucas's neighbors hated me. And that's how I ended up in animal communication, which is like, I was, searching ways to look for him. And animal communication is basically the capacity to receive and transmit messages to animals in the form of images, sounds, feelings, and sensations. So it's done telepathically. So you connect with the animal through your mind. And
somebody helped you. There's like a guide or like a specialist.
I haven't been able to well, apparently I have. So we are always like, animals are always picking up our thoughts, which is really cool, because when you hear it, when somebody, it would be so cool if you could do a podcast with the animal communicator I work with, and Teo and Juan, because animals know everything. Like, you will like they will have opinions on the person you're dating. They will know whatever you're doing. So like, for example, I will tell you about the book that I'm reading about animal communication.
Tell me like, when you, in December, you communicated with Rambo.
With Rambo. So
and you find out that where he was, or
yes. So Rambo described what happened when he left. Like the animal communicator only had his name and his photo, nothing else. And Rambo described to him what happened when he left, why he left, where he
What
was
happened?
going. Yes.
So what
Like,
I'm asking, what happened?
oh, what happened was that Rambo was chilling under like a computer, on like the computer desk of Lucas, and then Lucas went there and Rambo got scared. So he got tangled on like all these cables and he got scared. And when Rambo gets scared, he gets like and then Lucas tried to like help him out of it, but that made him even more scared. So it was kind of like a fight within them. And then he went upstairs. And Lucas thought, oh, he's gonna go hide somewhere. But the garden, the door to the garden was open, and through the garden you can escape. But Rambo had never escaped before. We would let him go to the garden. He loved the garden. He would chase insects and destroy plants and stuff like that. But this time he escaped through the garden. So Rambo described where he is, what he's seeing, because I told the animal communicator I was in Paris, but I didn't tell him I was in the banlieues, which is green areas and all of this. So he tells me like, so yeah, Rambo's describing me a green area and like big houses. I don't know what part of Paris you are, but like because if you imagine Paris, it's like lots of buildings and like apartments and stuff like that. And then Rambo would communicate what he was eating, where he was finding food, how he was feeling, like the animals, like he would show him kind of like what he was seeing. So where Rambo is right now, it's a green area. There are not many humans around, so it's like one of these big parks around here, but I don't know which one, because what he tried to do was like he was trying to go home, like to my house. So he got out, he was scared, and then he decided like, okay, now I'm gonna get courage and I'm gonna get home. So he kept walking, but then at some point he was like, I don't know how much left is there to get home, and I just found this little shelter here in this area where I can get food and stuff, so I'm just gonna stay here and hope for Pierina to find me. So he's been there ever since. And like I did another connection with him 2 weeks ago, and Rambo described the cold, like how like before he had found a woman who was feeding, like who would feed cats like regularly, but the woman apparently stopped feeding, like she's not feeding anymore. So like when the person connects, and apparently this is a skill that we can all develop and that we all have it in a way, like
Is he okay though? Is Rambo okay right now?
he is okay. I mean, the winter has been really hard on him. Because the animal communicator, he tells me like I can feel the cold, like he sends you the sensations, so you can feel the emotions that the animal's going through. You can see what they see. So if they're cold, you will feel the cold because they're sending you the cold. And that's the way animals communicate within themselves. So they are
Have you been able to like see something, or the communicator is describing it? Because
the communicator describes. So that's the part that's hard,
so
because
if you could go on Google Maps around Lucas's house, like you couldn't see where
it looks like he traveled quite a bit. Like he walked, he was trying to get home. So that's the challenging part, because he went towards what his internal compass told him that is the way home. But we don't know if his internal compass worked properly. We don't know if he went north, south, west, east. And so he describes green areas. He describes going up and down. So there is a park nearby that's huge, that is like that. So I am starting to go there and just like call out his name to see if he's there.
How do you say, have you seen this black cat in French?
No.
How do you say
how do you say this black cat? C'est chat noir.
No, but how do you say, have you seen this black cat, assuming Rambo is black?
Est-ce que
When you
vous
were,
avez vu un chat qui est noir?
and it, so you must have asked like 100 times this to
Oh
people.
yeah, like all the neighbors around like 2 blocks around Lucas' house, they all know about Rambo. They're like, oh yeah, Rambo.
And they have,
So
oh my God, it'd be incredible if
so what I'm actually trying to do right now is I am myself learning animal communication because yeah, my goal is because right now what George, who like it's been just so great to connect with George because he's such a beautiful soul. Like he really there was a time when after the scam, I messaged him and I was like, hey, like I want to do another session. I don't want you to think that I gave up on Rambo. It's just that let me just put this to charge. Um it's just that right now I described to him a little bit what was going on, like I got scammed and like I was working as a nanny and so forth. And like I just got a job I found a job as a nanny eventually, but they exploited me. They paid me €8 an hour. But at least it was money. So like I explained all of this to him and he was like, he told me like what's important for me is to help you. So you can just donate whatever amount you can, or if not, we can make it free and you can do like a testimonial or something like that, just as an energy exchange.
I thought that he would be like, if you can't pay me, then you can nanny me, and you can be
Oh,
like,
but he's in Australia.
oh, what?
Yeah,
He's been doing this animal communication from Australia?
yeah, you can do it distant. That's why I tell you that it would be super cool if you could do one with him and Teo and see what Teo has to say. um
That's
uh
incredible.
yeah, it's this yeah, because animals like and you know how you know it's true, like, and this is how I'm going to start, because you first, when you start learning, you start asking them very basic questions like what's your favorite food, or where do you like to sleep, and the animal will describe things with precision, like um they were like, oh, I always sleep on this red couch that's like next to this, like the piano, where like, like, and like my human always like sleeps next here. So they will describe things with precision, and then you go and you tell the human. So he tells me that, he does this and that and that, and that's how you start, to like start to trust your skill, because animals are always receiving our messages.
Yeah.
What we learn to do is to like be in a state where we are receptive to them, so that we can receive the message from them. And at the beginning, we receive them in a way that we think they're our own thoughts, like, because you ask the animal like, what's your favorite food, and maybe the animal says like, I don't know, like
Chilaquiles from the
chilaquiles, and you're like, fuck chilaquiles, and then it turned out that the day before the animal ate the chilaquiles of their human, and and they knew that it was chilaquiles. So like and they have and they can just, they also do it to like determine sometimes, for example, one of the cases of George was like, this family had they had sheep, and they had a new sheep that wasn't really getting integrated with the rest of the animals. It was like kind of like out there, really sad, would sometimes not eat. And so they did an animal communication session with George, and George asked the sheep like, what's going on. And what had happened to the sheep was that like this sheep had been abandoned and changed houses so many times that he was afraid of like connecting, because he was just waiting for next time he was going to change houses and get abandoned as well. So then George tried to explain to him, no, like this is your home, like they love you, this is your family, they're going to keep you, and they're going to like, try to explain to him that this is now his family, and that he is loved, and that he can feel safe, and that they're going. And then days later, the sheep was happy and like integrating with the family. So
Yeah.
like animals are way more, they have feelings, they have emotions, they are aware, they're just this magnificent creature. So I always loved animals deeply. So that was one of the first kind of journeys into spirituality, because
Now you're
it was
looking into
I'm
getting into that.
yeah.
It would be so cool if you really developed this and were
Oh,
able
I'm
to,
learning it.
yeah,
I'm
if,
learning
and you
it.
were able to communicate with Rambo, and hopefully one day be able to see him, at least know he's okay, you know. And
Yeah.
my time has flown by, so I'm going to ask you the official last question of the Stephan Dyer podcast that we ask all our guests. And it's, if we were to meet a year from now with a bottle of champagne, what are we celebrating in Pierina's life?
I think that what we're celebrating is that I regained faith in life. Um, just just to go back a little bit to spirituality, there's a book that I would recommend anyone, which is called Many Lives, Many Masters, from Brian Weiss. He's a psychiatrist who was educated in Yale and Columbia. And he started doing psychotherapy and hypnosis. He would do that for many years to people, to kind of like, because sometimes we have traumas that happened to us when we were babies or we're 2 years old and we don't remember them. So working through that helps us, like, heal some illnesses and anxieties and so forth. So in one of these sessions, one of the patients that the book is all about this patient. She first regressed to when she was 2 years old, when she was in the womb, but at some point she regressed to a past life, and she started narrating stories and so forth. So like in this book, they kind of describe, it gave me a different outlook on life. That is, it's more about learning, like what are the lessons that we came into this incarnation to learn, so like because I was not born to become a data scientist, or to be an architect or whatsoever. I came here to learn particular lessons that are meant to help my spirit grow and evolve. So that has been an outlook that I have reached through different means, like astrology, like animal communication, this outlook from past lives, that I started looking at things that happened in my life as like, what is this trying to teach me? Right? So like this past year, I had dealt a lot with loss. The loss of a relationship, the loss of the love of my life, which is Rambo, the loss that I didn't process before from a past relationship. I also lost my best friend, like the friend that was supporting me through the time of Rambo. Afterwards, unfortunately, he kind of took away his support in a way that was so painful to me, and I never really expected that. So I had I had dealt with like feeling I had no control in life, like I got scammed, and like I didn't have control
Yeah.
over the visa and everything. And evaluating everything that looked back, I learned that one of the lessons I had to learn was attachment. Like, why, for example, why hadn't I closed that relationship from before in my mind? And it was an issue of attachment, of fear of loss, of like, like that made me even rethink about how I enter relationships. Like, am I entering a relationship because of a need that I'm trying to like fill, or because I'm actually happy in my life?
Yeah.
How can I process this? And like, for example, now things haven't really changed much. I got my visa.
That's
Um,
amazing.
that was amazing, but like like for example, I have to move houses now. My house is super cold, and we have to do make cut wood and make fire for 4 hours a week. I still haven't found Rambo. Um, so things haven't got particularly easy. I have a nanny job now that's declared, but it's the kids sometimes get on my nerves.
Yeah, I know what that's like.
And like like me before last year would be like, oh, why couldn't I find a better family? And like now my look is like, okay, what is this trying to teach me? What lesson can I get out of this? Or what skill am I bringing into my life that I need to like process to go to the next level? Because what I realized is that life sends you challenges to learn lessons. And if you don't learn that lesson that time, it's going to send you a challenge on that same lesson that's harder. So you
Wow,
open your eyes, and it's going to keep sending it to you until you get the message. So
it's incredible.
so it all of this thing with Rambo has kind of like shifted. It has taken me out of my feet completely, but in a certain way, I learned to trust life in that if I do my best and I try my best. And then the other one is also a lot about like self-love and what self-love means, like like taking care of my body. Like right now I'm doing, in the mornings I meditate, I pray, and I do yoga every morning. And at night I meditate, and I pray, and those things help me ground myself. But every day is kind of an act of like loving myself and taking care of myself, and just honoring everything that I went through, and the resilience that I have had to go through, and just be like, you can keep going. And like, and just like because I knew that this year was not going to be easier from an astrological point of view. I knew it. I was like,
Yeah.
people who are hoping 2021 is going to be easier, I'm sorry, it's not. It's going to be lots of change. It's going to be really like challenging. It might get a little bit better, but just wait until 2024 when you want things to actually get better. Until now, it's going to still be change and chaos, and learning to adapt with chaos, and learning to like engage in your life. So I think that what I would celebrate is that I was able to turn so much pain and so much loss and so much like not being able to 26 years of like not trusting life, to like learning to like
Let go.
let go. And also like some of the people who have been in my life, and like I would say the three main people besides my family, like friends, like which I will say with names, like Pierina, Angelica, and Marcus, they had been with me like every week, checking in. How are you? Talking with me, like validating my pain. Because one of the other really hard things about Ram was because he's a cat, I felt like people didn't really understand the degree to which it was so painful to me. So it made me feel so alone. And I was like, why can't you guys understand that for me it's like losing a family member, like if my sister had gone missing, if you guys were supporting me the way you're supporting me now, you're probably not great friends. But because it was a cat, people behave differently. But like this three, and there were also other great friends, who have been checking in. But these three people were like there every week, talking, calling me, making sure I'm okay. And just, like never underestimate how much your love and support when a person really, 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 really matters to you can help them to get through some of like the darkest times. Because I went to such a low place that I didn't know how I could get out. I just didn't know. And because like whatever religion for me was like, yeah, I don't know how to like approach that. But like, when I see things as lessons that I am to learn and to incorporate, and that we all have lessons, and Rambo has his own little lessons and karma. So like for me, it's also like, you know, praying that he learns whatever he needs to do. It has allowed me to have a different outlook in life that lets me live with peace, you know, because
Yeah.
just not knowing, well, I do know how he is, but not being able to protect Rambo is still a pain that's with me every single day. You know, it hasn't gone away. I just learned to live with it. So
Kitty, thank you for sharing. This has been incredible, and your pain and your learnings are definitely gonna help our viewers, our listeners, because a lot of people are going through the same thing, and they don't have either the courage or the tools or the opportunity to share it. So
yeah.
your sharing is gonna help them. So on behalf of myself, my wife, who's the producer, and Liam, who's crying
Oh, little Liam.
and screaming in the background, I want to thank you very much. This was the Stephan Dyer podcast. Pierina Alessandra Camarena Pukuwanka and Stephan Dyer Garcia Pacheco. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Yeah, thank you. Goodbye.
Gracias por escuchar el Stephan Dyer Podcast. Arrivederci, my people.